Welcome to Pat's Papers. I'm Pat Kiernan. This is our daily rundown of headlines from all across the country. The Oscars are the story that fills more pages than any other today. The LA Times says it was an amazing outcome for Slumdog Millionaire in Hollywood last night. 8 awards, including Best Picture. The Times always pays particular attention to the business decisions in Hollywood. Fox Searchlight gets credit for patient marketing of Slumdog Millionaire, a movie that opened on only 10 screens. Previous successes for Fox Searchlight include Juno, Little Miss Sunshine, and Sideways. It's a harsh review for Hugh Jackman in the Times this morning. TV critic Mary McNamara says it was more Broadway than Hollywood, as Jackman interpreted all of the Best Picture nominees. She writes, "Didn't we decide as a nation that big dance numbers were a blight on the Oscar telecast?" Chicago Sun-Times movie critic Roger Ebert has a differing opinion. He says the Oscar telecast was entertaining and innovative. The Boston Herald's front page has Kate Winslet for her Best Actress win. The Dallas Morning News calls it a rich night for Slumdog. Slumdog star Freida Pinto was not singled out for her acting, though she is singled out on the front page of the New York Daily News with some of the fashion coverage. There's a review on 3 pages inside the newspaper. Natalie Portman gets a wow. Viola Davis is labeled a winner. Kate Winslet is labeled a flop. And Miley Cyrus gets the Fire the Stylist caption. The New York Post also puts Freida Pinto on page 1, saying she dazzled on the red carpet. Though there is a difference of opinion here on some of the other stars, the Post did not think Miley Cyrus's dress was so bad, and Viola Davis was singled out for having one of the worst dress selections. To the Wall Street Journal, the headline on the top of the front page, U.S. eyes large stake in Citi. This is still in the discussion stage, but Citigroup is in talks regarding a huge government investment. The Journal says that investment could result in the feds owning 40% of the common stock of the bank. On the topic of government involvement in banks, New York Times columnist Paul Krugman makes the case today that nationalization is the answer for turning around banking trouble in America. He says we've already got lemon socialism with some involvement in banking, so we might as well have a system, he says, where taxpayers own the downs as well as the ups. He says the road to recovery runs through nationalization. There is a banking story on the front page of the Times about a new stress test that the Obama administration will use to try to determine whether a particular bank will be able to weather an even more severe economic downturn. Interesting piece in the Washington Post this morning about a new phenomenon called eco-migration. This is the movement of people caused by climate change or by fear of climate change. The most extreme example may be in the Pacific islands of Kiribati, where 100,000 people could find their homes uninhabitable if ocean levels rise. To page 3 of the Washington Post about the jostling inside the GOP. Republican governors hoping to obtain the 2012 nomination are forced now to make some tough decisions about how they will react to the economic stimulus bill. Only 2 Republican governors have spoken in favor of the bill so far, Utah Governor John Huntsman and Charlie Crist of Florida. The San Francisco Chronicle this morning picks apart the politics of the census. Earlier this month, Senator Judd Gregg of New Hampshire withdrew as the designation for Commerce Secretary, apparently due in part to disagreements with President Obama over the census. A Harvard professor says this really shouldn't be surprising because everything about the census is political. He says it is the basis of the 2 most important things in politics, money and representation. A report today in the Detroit News about the lengths to which desperate homeowners are going to move their properties. Some Detroit sellers are almost giving their homes away or going to other extreme measures. You're not supposed to hold a private raffle in Michigan, but some people are working around that and trying to give away property with an essay competition. More bad news from the news industry. The owners of the Philadelphia Inquirer filing for bankruptcy protection. The Inquirer addresses that issue on its front page, saying it will continue to publish. The main problem for the 2 papers in Philly is not their day-to-day profit, but rather the big debt the company is stuck with. The New York Times looking at the news business, saying investors are growing increasingly impatient with red ink on the print side of Rupert Murdoch's business. The story says his lifelong love for newspapers has become a significant drag on the fortunes of his company, the News Corporation. And finally, speaking of significant drag, why did they think this was a good idea in the first place? I don't know. Stuart Elliott's advertising column in the Times this morning says Tropicana is already abandoning its new look packaging and will go back to its familiar old carton. A lot of people saw the new orange juice packaging, thought it looked like a generic store brand, not their familiar Tropicana. Elliott notes that part of this decision came through instant feedback from the internet, which let the company know almost immediately that the new package design was a flop. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm Pat Kiernan. Thank you for joining me. Go to patspapers.com for links to all of these stories.